Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Guy here. Honestly, I'm bringing to you a continuation of yesterday's video because apparently there's still a few more things that I apparently skipped out from an hour and 30-minute long video. Anyway, I'm bringing you to another video for Conqueror's Blade, uh, published by Paris Interactive and my games developed by Booming Tech. We are back on the PTR, obviously. The two things that I missed out apparently was Seasonal Storm, not very important to me. It's mostly rehashes and recoloring of old stuff. And some balance changes that did come through. We'll be taking a look at them in-game and as I read them out as verbatim from a announcement inside the Discord. But yeah, let's start off with the Seasonal Store. Obviously, we have the possibility of purchasing extras. Not sure if anyone would really want to purchase extras or if they just have too many blades. It's a nice color. You don't get these colors. And again, very sad to see that we're going to get less and less variety as time goes on, going down to 3 from the original 13 weapons and stuff. So it's actually very surprising to see how fast the seasonal store is catching up. This is the Dynasty. This is the Dynasty wardrobe. Not to say that it looks spectacular. It's fine. I find this interesting because the black and red versus what they have here looks so much lighter and less dark. Though I do like a little bit of dark. The theme in the background probably clashed too much with the dark colors in season. Obviously, you have the Scorpio season still around. We don't have, again, same old, just the scroll of forgetfulness. Oh, no. Oh, I didn't notice that this was here. Allows you to reset the mastery fully for a unit. We got rare armor schematics, you can get 10 of those. You got 30 artificial stone, not a lot. I think artificial stone they're being a bit stingy here. Treaties, silver powder. Obviously these seasonal doctrine selection boxes are practically useless. They're realistically not useful at all unless you're running double. They have massive limitations on them as well, so it just, I don't know. There are some people that have multiple units of the same units, and maybe they want the seasonal doctrines in order to not have to continuously swap them between the two. But again, these are not the doctrines that are hidden away in the doctrine challenges. But yeah. Oh, one doctrine that would probably see people get copies of is this Valkyrie's Blessing one. Honestly, if it didn't overlap with defense type and just classified as others, this would be a really good doctrine. But unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no. As you can see, all of these are available in the unit tree. So, if you complete the unit challenges, sorry, you just get them. Now, I'm going to read you verbatim what the announcement for the balance changes are on the PTR right now. We can have a look at them as well. Just bear with me. No, I've got no test partner right now. And first off, we have balance changes. Based on recent battle statistics and community feedback, we'll be implementing the following unit balance adjustments in the upcoming Season 18. With these changes, we aim to provide opportunities for some weaker yet distinct units to shine, thereby enhancing the diversity of battles. Shield Maidens. In recent battles, Shield Maidens have demonstrated relative weakness compared to other units with similar abilities but lower leadership requirements. As the only tier 5-star shield unit, we aim to bolster our defensive capabilities. Adjustment. Leadership. 310 through 280, so about 30 leadership off. Damage reduction of cover commander skill increased from 15% to 30%. Big increase, doubling the amount could be more effective depending on how other how other things work out. Defense enhancement effect of Guardian increased from 10% to 200%. Again, I always thought this was a flat number. I thought it was 150 for a flat number or 250 for a flat number. But surprisingly, it is a percentage. Now it's going to be increased to 20%. This could be either an armor increase or this could be a damage reduction increase. I'm going to go with an armor increase. It realistically is underutilized for what it does, especially for tankier units. Medaus would love this. I mean, nearly any unit would love this. 20% increase in armor makes things very difficult to kill. Slashing damage increased by 10%, piercing damage increased by 10%. So overall, we got a massive increase. This 10% actually knocks on to a big old buff. Considering that Shield Maidens probably smack for about 3k, give or take. So they'll be hitting for like 3.5, probably 3, yeah, probably about 3.5k now. Varangian Guards. Despite being proficient in counter-strike tactics, Varangian Guards are currently underperforming against some meta units. We intend to enhance their damage resistance on defense and increase their damage output during counterattacks, thereby diversifying tactical gameplay on the battlefield. Adjustments. Base damage reduction of Unbreakable increased from 30% to 40%. Armor penetration and damage increase from 300 points to 400 points when Raging Onslaught is activated. So that are those. So 100% increase on Raging Onslaught and a 10% increase on Unbreakable. Again, not how I would handle the Varangian Guards, but overall, it's going to be very tanky during Unbreakable. Has always been the thing. They're kind of on par, well, was on par with like ISG per model, by the way, per model, during Unbreakable in formation kind of thing. So this is going to just put them up just a little bit, but still going to really struggle with the counterattack. They can't dish out the damage, which should result in a roughly around about a 10-ish% increase overall. Barcian Narfan Guards. I like how they have the Barcian Narfan Guards, and they don't even keep the name. Although they call it the Barcian Narfan Guards, they are called the Siphonarioi in-game. So, I will refer to them as the Siphonarioi for the purposes of this video. So, the Siphonarioi's method of attack demonstrates unique suppressing power against high-density infantry. However, their overall performance is relatively lackluster, prompting adjustments to enhance their basic attributes and influence local battlefield strategy. So, adjustment. Leadership is going from 315 to 300, so 15 leadership off. Base damage increased by 200. Base health increased by 20%. Now, I've always felt that the Narfan Guards the Siphonarioi have been kind of strange. They are, for all intended purposes, completely busted, but very difficult to use. Their relative glass cannon nature allows people to focus them down very quickly. But their mere existence could dictate a single battle so one-sidedly that winning, it was impossible, near impossible, when you were going up against the Narfan Guards in a tight space. If it was open, obviously you can get around. The area denial from the Siphonarioids are just incredibly, incredibly powerful and should never be underestimated. The relative damage output from these guys have seen some better days. I think higher health units and relative damage, fire resistance have been creeping up, or to say the very least, just the health has been making it very difficult for the Siphonarioi to really kill anything. Unless you're doing the top line quickfire, you're not gonna really kill anything with the Siphonariois at any rate. Though I say that, a lot of people still die when that the firestorm is shooting in your direction. Nevertheless, the 20% health increase is probably the biggest plus I would see. I think pushing the Siphonariois to over 10k would have been better overall, getting them closer to the battle and less glass cannony. I don't like the glass cannon nature. I really, really think that the small number of units already makes this very difficult to balance properly. But nevertheless, we have the Falconetti Gunners. Falconetti Gunners possess unique strategic value with a distinct attack method, but their impact on the current battlefield environment is waning. By appropriately increasing their firepower output, they can better leverage their unique advantages. So adjustments if leadership goes from 320 to 300, base ammo increase by 30%. Now, they said that increasing their firepower output, that was a straight lie. They just did double utility, lower leadership costs, higher ammo. Again, this is realistically an issue with just how Falconetti Gunners, as powerful and as OP as they are outputting lower damage, and I say lower damage, than their contemporaries. And it's not their fault, realistically. If you have just a whole bunch of guys just stacked on top of each other, a Falconetti Gunner will blast through that pile like it's nobody's business, throwing everyone into throwing the entire formation into disarray is more effective than just any raw damage. But again, the number of units they can hit is really restrictive on the types of battlefield, the speed of the battlefield as well. We're not slow, we are fast. We hit hard, and we get out. There's no time for the Falconettis to rain down fire. There is very few opportunities for them to realistically output more damage or impact because, again, their low accuracy, a relatively low fire rate, and general damage is just not on par as things like the Kriegs, the Kriegs Fusiliers to be precise, or the Imperial Arquebusiers. I don't know what you would do, Falconetti Gunners. They are just one of the ranged units that mere existence would put to shame any infantry formation and would devastate basically any attack if you were to try to push through the fire. And again, you could probably fix the issue just by doubling their damage. Make them hurt along with all the CC, and easy. You could also make their explosion larger to get more CC out. Again, there are multiple ways you could fix or make the Falconetti Gunners have better impact, but the changes or adjustments not going to do anything. They're still going to be a specialized unit. They have huge strategic value, but it's just simply not valuable enough in more situations. So they need to become more generalist, more generally overpowered in order to compete in the current battlefield. And what they've done, not enough. Now, onto a very interesting unit, and I'm not sure what they did incorrectly or what they're doing wrong, but the Grayhair Garrisons are statistically should be smacking heads very easily. But besides that, let's go through the balance changes that they have done, and I'll briefly explain why I think there's something wrong with them. Grayhair Garrisons are unique mixed unit. Struggles against some mainstream 4-star units to enhance their survivable abilities, particularly during the activation of the Last Stand skill. Adjustments are made to introduce more variation to the battlefield. Adjustments. Leadership goes from 230 to 200, even cheaper than something like the Men-at-Arms at 225, I think. Base health increase by 20%. Damage reduction of the Last Stand skill increased from 15% to 25%. Now, the changes they did to how the Grayhair Garrisons react when you activate the No Retreat button is the main issue that I'm running into. For some reason, they're not throwing damage out like they're supposed to. There is something to do with the attack range of the pike variants. There is something happening with the swordsman just missing. The only one that seems to hit on the regular does seem to be the shields. I will kind of go over them in game once I finish reading these out, and we'll take a look at each of the units in sequence as well. So, a unit that I think even if you buff these guys all hells, it'll never be useful. Alchemist, as the first unit with a support healing mechanism, the Alchemist, that's a lie! What happened to the Expedition Knights, the Zamachian Paladins? That's a straight up lie. The Alchemists offer unique and intriguing healing skills to promote philanthropic unit orders in battle. Their leadership is reduced while the healing effect of their healing hand skills is significantly increased. Leadership 90 down to 60, so 30 leadership off. Again, super cheap, not even worthy of the tier 3 line. Healing hands recovery increase from 1% maximum HP to 20% maximum HP. Again, this is insane. It's still going to be useless. Now, why do I say it's still going to be useless? For all intent and purposes, alchemists have a tendency to get themselves killed. They need to be on the units that they're healing, so that's the first problem. So they have to. So any units that are very close to the front or in danger means that they will be sharing in some of the damage that is incoming onto that unit. Many times I've seen alchemists use their healing hands and then just get completely bodied because they go to the wounded guys at the front who are dying. So they become 6 very squishy meat shields that die with a drop of a hat. No one uses them for their healing over time. Realistically, if your guys are wounded and you want to heal, you just go back to the supply point. The overall impact of positioning and relative, put it like this, the battlefield just does not accommodate this style of healing. It doesn't demand it does, like, even if you had the alchemist, their focus will be split if there's been if a bunch of guys get wounded and a bunch of guys leave and they all go towards the supply point. No one's going to stay around on the point waiting to be healed. Even at 20% max HP, maybe, like 20% at max HP, that's 5 seconds to heal someone from basically near death. And there's 6 of them, so I'm healing 6 guys every 5 seconds. 30 seconds, you can heal a whole unit. It's still not strong enough. It's still not that. It's still limited by its practicality. What would have been better is healing hand not requiring them to be on top of the unit that they're healing, and also healing a larger number of people. If they could heal 30 people for 1% max HP a second, that would be absolutely an insane unit to bring along. And I mean seriously. Longswords heal for only 1% for 10 seconds with their Heaven of Mercy. And if you can bring an Alchemist that does the exact same thing, but it's basically perpetual, that would be a very strong ability. But because of the limitation on the number of units it's affecting, you're never logistically going to be in a scenario where you want Alchemists, because the supply point is just so much better. You could swap units, heal up like a near-dead unit in an instant by bringing out a new unit? Don't know. I don't know what they can do to the Alchemists besides just letting them just be OP. Just get out of this idea that the current setup for the Alchemists are remotely usable. The only good thing is the increased block recovery during the healing hands thing, but no one even notices that. Prefecture Pikemen focused on charge attacks. The Prefecture Pikemen benefit from a reduced charge cooldown time, enabling them to adapt better to the evolving battlefield environment. Adjustment: base charge cooldown time reduced from 60 seconds to 40 seconds. Again, for this one, I would have reduced it down to 20 seconds or 25 seconds. 40 seconds is still a long time. Prefecture Pikemen are a kind of one and done unit, very unlikely to get more than one charge out unless you completely destroy your target. There's so many units that can survive the Prefecture Pikemen, and there's so many units that can counter the Prefecture Pikemen very quickly. Prefecture Pikemen are not particularly fast, and again, they're actually not particularly hard hitting. Even for a tier 3 unit, they fall behind very quickly in terms of durability, damage output. I mean, surprising thing is that they still suffer from like the classic pike charge hitbox issue, where just moving slightly away will allow you to dodge the pike charge. And also they have a habit of overkilling because the contact hitbox is just set wrong. If anything, I think their attack after the charge has been more reliable than their charge itself. Though, again, I don't use Prefecture Pikemen that much, so if anyone uses them and bat for them, all to the power to you. I just don't believe that going from 60 seconds to 40 seconds is going to really allow them to shine. They're going to be still a niche pick. I'd still pick Ironcap Swordsman over the Prefecture Pikemen. Much safer pick. They have higher durability, much faster, and more unstoppable than the Prefecture Pikemen. Very easy to kill the Prefecture Pikemen versus something like the Ironcap Swordsman. Though I must say that the Ironcap Swordsmen do have a well, I mean, again, like the mastery for the Prefecture Pikemen, the CC immunity and the increase. They're just too squishy. Just too squishy. If they had a shield, I think they would be fine. They'd probably be equal to the Ironcap Swordsman, but now that I'm thinking about it, Ironcap Swordsman with the +1 charge, and you get all of the charge things. Absolutely unmatched in that scenario. Continuing on, we have the Ironcap Spearman, primary heavy shield units during the 3-star age. The Ironcap Spearmen see a increase in HP to distinguish them from other heavy shield units. Adjustment is leadership going from 150 to 130. Base health increase by 30%. My goodness, the Ironcap Spearmen are going to be so tanky. No one's going to use them still. Main problem is that any heavy shield unit is just absolutely useless because it only serves as a glorified punching bag. It's basically the equivalent of a serf if it does no damage. And I'll show you, these guys deal no damage. They can tank a lot of damage, and they are actually super valuable, and in tier 3, they're gonna be the mainstay for anyone that wants to protect a point. But if you're being real, no one's gonna use them, no one's gonna like them, and if anything, it's gonna end up being, it could possibly be Ironcap Spearman with range out the ass. Because of how powerful the rattan marksmen are, you would basically be able to cut down any cavalry that tries to go for them. And I mean cut down, not to belabor a point, but cavalry charges don't survive an onslaught of the rattan marksman damage, let alone the poison. And finally, we got two last ones actually. Kriegsrath Fusiliers, known for their high mobility and impressive damage output. The Kriegsrath Fusiliers stand out among other arquebus units to introduce more strategic depth. Their health is slightly reduced, providing opportunities for generals to exploit their weakness. I love how they put slightly reduced, like they don't know English, and then the adjustment is basic HP decreased by 30%. 30% decrease is massive. Absolutely massive. These guys would be so close in HP now towards their Imperial Arquebusier counterpart, and even at less models, this is egregious. Egregious. This is a heavy nerf. And you know what? This is probably not enough. Because the real issue with ranged units is not about how easy they are to kill. It's always been about how much damage they output. Kriegsrats, if you get on top of them with any regular unit, instantly murdered. But you can't get on top of them, they'll slaughter you. You are their living ammo. 12 ammo back per kill. 12 ammo back per kill. What an insane, absolutely insane return. I don't think anyone in their right mind would have gave something like Kriegsrat Fusiliers, probably one of the highest damage outputs of the ranged units, an infinite ammo cycle, like a legitimate infinite ammo cycle. Not to mention, they also increase their damage by 40% after firing like 20 shots. It is the pure fault of giving the Kriegsrat Fusiliers just the impressive damage output. Nothing more. To make them squishier doesn't change anything about them. They're still going to slaughter anyone. You know what's going to happen? People are going to play them slightly safer. They still have incredible mobility. They're still going to have incredible impact. And so what? The only times they actually die is when your front line is dead. The real people that take the risk are those at your front line, and those that are holding the enemy where they are. A nonsensical change, and it doesn't address the core issue again. Ironcap Scouts. Everyone saw this coming, but everyone didn't expect what they were going to do. And, I mean, maybe people predicted, but I'ma just say, I think they could have done a bit more than this. The Ironcap Scouts, favored by many warlords, has a high cost performance ratio and excessive control over heroes. Affecting battlefield balance, adjustments aims to reduce their control over heroes while increasing their leadership to create more balanced confrontations. Adjustment, leadership, 95 to 120. Dominate the world no longer causes days. Again, I think this is no longer causes days to heroes, but if it no longer causes days in general, that is a good thing. But at the same time, I'm really, really, really speculating if they even understand how Ironcap Scouts are just still going to dominate. They're still cheap. 120 is not that expensive. Their value comes in not just killing heroes, but hitting the weak, squishy range, which will easily just get compounded into oblivion. But let's also not underestimate the amount of damage these guys are dealing. It's no small amount. There are lots of tier 4 units that are struggling to deal with Ironcap Scouts. And by all intent and purposes, I've seen Ironcap Scouts do really well at catching even tier 5s off guard. You can easily manhandle units with 2 Ironcap Scouts. Now, if it is no longer causes days, that would probably solve a lot of issues for some of the ones that are getting days locked. But the damage is still there. The damage doesn't just disappear. They'll be less safer. They will probably take more losses. And you'll probably avoid damage in the long run with this change. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna probably have to wait until we get more data on the Ironcap Scouts. But I do not think that the Ironcap Scouts are going to go away. I think people are going to still love them, and people are still definitely going to use them. Now, that being said, let's go back to the start. Now, we're going to take a look at, let's see, Sigram's Shield Maidens. Got some changes to them. Increase slightly their piercing and slashing defense. As you can see, they did go up slightly. So this used to be 1,000. This used to be 1,100. I don't think it's going to change very much. Cover Commander and Guardian. Now, there are a lot of things that is just really irritating about the Sigram's Shield Maidens. So, it's kind of like a hidden effect. Let's bring out the branding guards as well. They're Warden style, so I guess that doesn't really matter too much. Now, everyone knows why these girls went out of control, and everyone knows that they are still strong. They're not meta, but they're still better than the rest. Again, these haven't been updated properly, but it does seem like that's just an error from my internet just being really bad. One thing that's really annoying is how this overlaps. The reason why anyone liked them, anyone ever used them, was because this bug where you swap between shield to swords and all of the cover commander bonuses coming out from here would transfer over to the sword version, so they would have this damage resistance, they would have the block while attacking, they would have the knockback on hit. Crazy amounts of bonuses coming in for the Shield Maidens. And it's just not entirely. So yeah, it says it's a flat amount of 150, but changing it to 20%. Now, I don't like the Shield Maidens. I don't like the Cover Commander playstyle, because it just makes using any of the other abilities absolutely pointless. You don't use the 2 ability because it's garbage. even though you can spam it, and it sends them back into Cover Commander. Now, the reason why you don't is because this Cover Commander is objectively inferior compared to the Weapon Swap Cover Commander. And I mean, again, it's just one of those things that just is just part of the unit that is now being ingrained. You can't get away from it unless you change it, and I want that changed. I think a fundamental rework for the Shield Maidens is to get them away from their current style instead of trying to fix something that is, again, broken. No one charges, even though that the buff for the charge is back. Like, this is back. This was bugged for a really long time. And they got a really nice charge for how it works. Especially that it smashes right through things. Now, I don't like the aspect of them making Cover Commander more tankier, because it just means that it hits more onto the side of using sword mode. So you just want to use sword mode for the increased attacks more, even though that you do get very tanky in Cover Commander mode. It's just it's a real struggle for me to kind of recognize them as a heavy shield unit anymore, because you never use them in formation, even though they have an amazing formation, even though they can be amazing in formation. They've got a nice formation, they've got knockback on hit, so they keep people at bay. They're just simply not tanky enough in this formation, and they're not durable enough in this formation for what they should be. And again, they get this buff while they're in the spear mode, increases the damage resistance, I believe. You get, while that's active, you swap it out, they get massive amounts of armor penetration. Can I tell the damage increase? I honestly can't. I normally think it was supposed to be about 3,000. It doesn't seem like a 10% increase. I thought it would be higher, but it kind of shows up. It's just probably not as strong as I thought it was going to be. You're seeing 4,000, but it's just like, those are block break numbers. Realistically, they'll hit for hitting for about 2,000, so. They're still underwhelming. They will still be underwhelming. I don't believe that they're going to be able to compete, especially against any of the meta units. Every single one of the meta units would just have so much damage baked into their kits that, seriously, like, so much damage baked into their kit that, like, having a single hit limit is actually such a detriment in comparison. Now, going on to the Varangian Guards, I've said this before. It is a unit that's difficult to balance because of how everything works out. You need to take damage in order to switch, so you need to be durable enough in the shield mode in order to counterattack. But how they calculate the rage meter for these things can be a little bit finicky. Also, the low numbers do not lend them credence either. These are Warden style, so imagine if you were to go the other one, which are much better, of course. You get the +1 on the axe mode, and you get the 15% extra damage against infantry. Again, these guys are a problem for when they are strong, and they're just not strong enough for the meta. As you can see, their regular attacks are dealing about 2,000 damage, This is base. This is base dealing 2,000 damage, and you saw before that Shield Maidens were doing 2,000 damage as well. These guys might be able to hit up to 3 people, have slightly better, and I say slightly better damage rate out from their normal. But obviously underperforming. Even their abilities just do not seem very strong unless you're below that 50% threshold where you get the 50% extra damage, you get that 20% health recovery. Again, like, you're playing with fire when you're low enough to almost die. And again, I hate this. I hate this. I hate the changes to Shadow Shield. They changed the Shadow Shield from a 3-hit ability. Well, originally it came out as a 2-hit ability, but it came with a 3-hit animation. And then they changed it to a 3-hit animation. And then they changed it to a 3-hit. Then eventually they changed it to a 2-hit. And changed the animation along with it.
Prepare for battle.
Am I upset? Yes, Varangian guards could have been better. They could still be better. But again, requires a rework. Both the Shield Maidens and both the Varangian guards require a rework. And you need to get away from this all or nothing kind of thing. Shield Maidens work better because the spear mode and the sword mode just bleed into each other. The spear mode is practically useless, and I say practically useless. There are some benefits to using it on occasions, but for all intent and purposes, you always want to be in the sword mode. The Varangian guards, you never want to be in the tank mode because you're just too squishy. The changes probably makes them tanky enough, but without the ability to heal, or every time you do need to heal, you got to put yourself in danger and change forms. And again, this form, way squishier, way squishier. A lot of times you will watch them take a bunch of damage in the shield mode, probably get to half health, switch to the sword mode, switch to the axe mode, and then just get obliterated. Because they're barely holding on when they're in the shield mode, when they're in sword mode. Barely holding on when they're in the sword mode, and then you switch them to the axe mode, and they're getting instantly killed, because the amount of damage that they can tank in the sword mode is absolutely insane in comparison. So, how do you fix this? Get rid of the heal. First of all, get rid of the heal. Get Varangian guards to the state where they don't need the heal. Or have the heal where it doesn't come from them attacking. Attacking simply makes this simply too easy to let them go out of control. That's really funny. Let them go out of control. So how I would do this is, instead of recovering during their axe skills, and again, they're missing one of their axe skills here, so that must be an oversight. I would have it that at the end of their rage, they'll heal. At the end of their rage, they'll heal, changing back into shield mode, depending on how much rage they used. Or, again, they'll be at 100% rage and they'll go to 0. Give them 100% heal. Do something crazy like that. You still have a minimum duration in this mode. You still have to wait 6 seconds in order to finish the entire sequence, or maybe slightly less. 100% heal? It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. Honestly, it's not ridiculous. Because to survive the 5 seconds of getting hit and counterattacking and then resetting seems like a so much better style than the current one. And you might say, oh, they're not going to survive. Yeah, of course they're not going to survive. Because a heal comes at the end, where it needs to be, because if it was anywhere else, it would just be too abusable. It's so abusable It was so abusable when you could activate these skills willy-nilly, and you wouldn't even do the attack. They would just heal. So every single time, you would just get these guys, get into axe mode, spam this key 3 times, get into Shadow Shield, hit 3 times, because that Shadow Shield was doing so much more damage. So much more damage back then. And they would have healed like 60%. And they would have already been in shield mode when you tried to counterattack. You will either be dead or they'd be max health. I mean, they would be around about 60%. They're never going to be at max health, to say the very least. Changes to these units, number-wise,
Our legend makes us
are not going to put them back into the
immortal.
meta, because systematically, these 2 units are already obsolete. We've moved into
Our
high
Maidens
burst
never
damage, high
stay long.
tankiness units. I mean, the fact that Iron Reapers have come back just shows you that they are statistically strong enough to just obliterate people. Means that they have the sufficient damage and they have the sufficient tankiness to survive. Zweihanders, again, they're meta units. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. These guys will smack you down and just make it impossible for you to counterattack them because they have Obliterate, which gives them block, so you can't block break them through this thing. And Furious Zeal's first 3 attack comes out with so much damage that you blink and your unit's dead. And let's not get started with the Lancelots right now. I still think Rapid Advance is too strong, deals too much damage, and obviously underutilizing the Lancelot's dueling technique. I love the Lancelot's dueling technique because it feels like I'm using Asseps again. But no one uses the dueling technique for any length of time. You know what people are doing right now? They're stabbing, running away, stabbing, running away, or they leave their guys in, throw out the shield bash, like once, one auto attack, and then just stabbing again. It's impossible to deal with Lancelots when they have an ability that deals just enough damage to kill half your squad, and you can't do shit about it because they're 1 second of invulnerability. I mean, put it this way, I almost beat Yan Yidals with them. I say almost, I killed half of them. Yan Yidal still put me in the dirt, and again, I hate that I can do basically nothing, and even as strong as Lancelots are, Yan Yidal still put me in the dirt. Since I'm not streaming, I am venting in this video as well. So as we're going to continue on, we're going to take a look at the Nafan Guards and the Siphonarios and the good old Falconetti. So again, you can get to 1,000 blunt damage or something, or even higher. If you go bottom line, you could push that even higher, I think. Yeah. I honestly think the blunt damage out from these guys. I'm surprised that, like, even with the 200 extra blunt damage, the 20% extra health, the 20% extra health just turned out to be 1,000. So they're only sitting at around about 6,000, and I'm just like, that still doesn't seem like enough for 7 guys. Though it is still much more than what they had before. It doesn't seem like it's good enough. Falconetti Gunners as well. I think they also deserve a health increase, but the main thing is as well for these guys, you might increase the ammo. They used to have 144 ammo, now they have 187 ammo. Their leadership is down, great, but do these guys get an ammo increase? Or is that an ammo thing naturally? They get an ammo thing naturally. These guys just don't output any damage in comparison to everything else. I mean, I say everything else, but Shenji Grenadiers, their grenades are so much more impactful. One throw from the grenade is more effective than a volley from these guys. That is absurd. That is absurd. Why is a grenade more effective than something from literal cannons? Like, if anything, these guys should be dealing more damage, or they should be dealing, or their attacks should have a much bigger AoE, causing more mayhem, dealing more damage. It's just nonsensical comparative, how comparative, or how strong something like the grenades from the Shenji Grenadiers are, and then you have the Falconetti Gunners that can barely compete with that. And I say barely compete with that. Just think about it. Just think about it. How fast and how mobile is the Shenji Grenadiers, and how flexible they are in any situation versus the Falconetti Gunners? There are only very precise situations where the Falconetti Gunners can ever be used, and even then, they're super easy to avoid. They also have a minimum range, so anyone standing next to them just instantly disables them. Upsetting to see that the Falconetti Gunners they're getting looked at, but they're not getting fixed. Increase of ammo is not going to change anything. That's not what anyone asked for. But no one cared about the Falconetti Gunners because no one cares for them to be strong. Because when they are strong, they're OP. No one wants that. Same with the Nafan Guards. No one wants them to be strong because they'd be OP. So you need to make them easier to use. So you need to make them not have minimum range. First of all, I'd get rid of the minimum range right now. I would make them tankier. I'd make them faster. I'd minimize the setup, and I'd make them deal more damage. You know this 3,800 or something? Yeah, 3,600. I'd double it. I'd let them hit like a super truck. I'd let them half health people with a single shot. That's how strong I think the Falconetti Gunners should be in the current meta. In the current meta, that's how hard they need to be hitting to even be competitive. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. Oh man, I actually have to show this one. So, let me go in. Grayhair Garrison. I didn't take a look at the health. We'll take a look at the health and strength. But it's just such a weird thing to happen with these guys. The last change, like these guys getting looked at multiple times, and they're still not viable. Because maybe it's just not the meta. Maybe it's just not the playstyle. These guys are brace style. They are stationary. They're not aggressive like. But the changes before, where you can go forward, press this ability, and again, like, why does that feel so weak when you do that? They move forward and then they hit. In here, it feels like they're hitting just fine. But in matches, I assure you, they bug out very easily. Very easily. Where you're trying to attack. See? Oh man, it's also bugging out here. They look impressive, but they're not. Surprisingly, they look impressive, but they're not. And I think it has to do with the fact that each of the soldiers are so different from one another. Oh, and look at that. After charging, you had the pikes try to attack from like super range or something. Against things like men-at-arms, these guys are going to be worthless. They're not going to be tanky enough to actually survive. But they're not going to be so weak that they're easy to kill. I want to believe that these guys can be strong, but I don't want them to. I don't want them to be that strong either, because they're also just another unit that just. They have a heal. When they're 40%, they can heal 10%. And if you can't kill that last 10%, they can be a real menace. But surprisingly, again, something about this unit just doesn't allow them to deal the damage that they should be dealing. Either the fact that the shields and the pikes are just not as strong as the swords, because the swords have multi-hit, while the shields only seem to hit 2 guys, and the pikes probably only hit 1. I had I checked out the other one before. It feels like when you're fighting against the Grayhair Garrisons, there's something wrong with them. They don't attack as hard. They don't hit as hard. They're durable, but they don't feel like they do any damage. And that's surprising since they increased the amount of damage they deal by 40% just recently. I say just recently, like last season. Surprisingly, these guys have 14,000 health as well. Statistically, they're pretty bad, to say the very least. Going to be really bad against armor. And, I mean, they're just not great. They're just not great. I don't know how they've done it. I don't know how they've done it. I thought the changes to no retreat was going to make them be able to deal more damage, because one of the problems with the Greyhair Garrisons is they get stuck. They're very durable, but they get stuck, meaning that when they get stuck, they're not dealing any damage. Means that when they're not dealing any damage and they're not attacking, they're not healing. And so, again, it's just not pumping out that cycle where they're continuously attacking and stuff, even though they have CC immunity for 1 second when they activate no retreat. I don't know what's wrong with them. For all intent and purposes, they should be very strong, but they're not. So, I don't think they need more buffs. I think they just need to be fixed somehow. Something to do with the ability, something to do with the hitboxes, maybe a rearrangement of how strong each of the individual weapon types are. Sword and shield needs to kind of, again, like, it's a mixed unit, so each individual unit only has 8 of the same weapon. So the pikes need to be dealing as much damage as the swords, and the swords must be dealing as much damage as the shields. But they don't have it like that. So you need to have other things overcompensating. I mean, overcompensating to achieve the kind of equilibrium that should be there. So what should be happening? The shields should be, well, this is the thing as well. It's just like the shields can't exactly block attacks for other people unless you make a complicated thing for this. So it's just like as long as the shields exist, the rest of the unit gets damage resistance, some bullshit. I mean, they block for one. The sword should be great with multi-attack, but it kind of overlaps with the spear as well. So both the sword and the spear are doing the same thing. They're dealing damage. Maybe the sword does less damage but hits more people, and the spear probably does more damage but only hits one person. But that means you need to have the spear hit hard, or hit so hard that it deals equal amounts to the sword, but you're still having to compensate for the shields. So you need to condense, I don't know, like 32 units worth of damage into 16 units. So they're dealing twice as much damage as normal. If I imagine that, like, a normal amounts of damage per unit would be around about, I don't know, 3,000 maybe damage. For a tier 4, it would be like 4,000 damage. Um, the swords would probably need to be dishing out 8,000 damage. So they'll need to hit like 4 guys for 2,000 damage. And this is just like ballpark numbers for just like bullshit thing. And then you need like the spear alone dealing 8,000 damage per hit. Again, they've made these things so absurd. I'm not even sure if they even follow what I say is going to fix it. I just not I'm not confident. Not confident in any changes that I suggest, and I don't care. But I seem to care a lot.
Je ne suis pas un ange.
These guys getting changed to 60, no one will bring them. They're too cheap to bring along, and by the time you bring them out, everyone's down to serfs anyway. So they just get thrown in. As you can see, Kuggle Monks did get a nice redux. Ah, man. I want to love these guys. The Mastery's CC immunity kind of thing just seems cool. But watching them just get decimated, barely dealing any damage sometimes just feels disgusting. I'm at the point where it's just like let them just block break already. Because they deal no block break, by the way. But their follow-up attack does heaps of block break. But the impact one obviously doesn't. Now, again, this is so out there. Look how much health this thing has. There are 40 units in this guy. 40 units. How absurd can I make the health on this guy? This health? This is also health. How far? 9. Maximum health. Let's go. Maximum 20,000 health per model. Although having the +4 is probably better. They have such an absurd mastery that it's still not strong enough somehow. Still not strong enough somehow. Because it's a shield unit. No one gives a crap about a punching bag. They're difficult to kill. You can make them the most difficult to kill unit in the game. No one wants to bring them because they're boring. No one wants to stand still fighting a unit for 20 minutes just because you can't deal any damage to it. But yeah, this is absurd. No one gives a shit about this unit. No one's going to use this unit. What you need to do, and I think what should happen, is that shield units need to control the battlefield. Give them impact. Give them the ability to block. Give them the ability to shove. Give them the ability to be a person on the battlefield. Because they're just a punching bag. Their existence doesn't matter. It's everyone else. Because the last person to die is the tankiest guy around. But if you're not doing anything, everyone's just going to ignore you. Let their advance be a short cooldown. This thing still has 60-second cooldown, by the way. Out of all of the heavy shields advances, this has 60-second cooldown. No one uses it. No one should use it. Because it's worthless. And we'll take a look at the Kriegsrat Twislier health. 5,164. You know how much health the Imperial Arquebusiers have? 4,800. There is a 400, almost a 400 health difference between this and this. Imperial Arquebusiers volley fire does the most damage out of everything in this game. Quite literally. in terms of DPS, there is nothing in this game that I can find that does more damage than this, unless we're talking about something that has like a super high, ridiculous hit limit, and I'm only counting the very second it hits. I mean, without the 15-second charge up, I could just bullshit my way and just say 12 units, 1 second, bam! The amount of burst damage from Yan Yudao is obviously ridiculous. Maybe I can go something with a charge. Maybe if I put 100 serfs in a tiny spot and just have a cavalry just run over it, they would be doing massive amounts of damage in a very short amount of time. Yeah, sure. In terms of DPS, reliable DPS, and something that's actually calculable, well, most of this is just from range anyway. Imperial Arquebusiers volley fire, highest, like 380,000 damage, per 60 seconds, I think. Oh no, not. Is it like 60 seconds? I think it might be a second. But yeah, I'm not sure. But like, don't worry about that one. Maybe I'm getting my numbers wrong here. But yeah, just imagine that they deal the most damage, and like the closest competitor is oh man, I want to bring out my sheet again. That's besides the point. Grayhair Garrisons being so squishy just makes me wonder, why would you bring these guys when their total throughput is weaker than these guys and they're basically just as easy to kill? Like these guys versus these guys. More flexible, faster, slightly more tankier versus more damage overall, needs to be in place, kind of thing. It could let, and I mean like, it could let them be like kind of, it could be a really good argument to say which one would you rather have, because the benefits from the Grayhair Garrisons was mainly their tankiness that was just outweighing everything else versus the Imperial Arquebusiers' raw damage. Like, their speed keeps them relatively safe, so even if you try to get on top of them, unless you're Cav, you're not going to catch them. And I mean, this is also very surprising. Not surprising, sorry. Imperial Archers are also coming in with their new abilities and stuff. You have big flexibility with these guys as well. Harder hitting bodkin hits now, and got sniping potential as well. Safer, I would say. These guys are safer. So it'd be like safe pick, risky pick. It'll be something like that. Not sure how to test this, but again, 120 now. Would you still bring it? The Ironcap Scouts mastered? I love how this has a 50% reduction against heroes, but it still was killing heroes. It's the exact same thing with Keshigs. It was the exact same thing with nearly every ability that would cause daze. Like, getting beaten up by Condis was funny. Getting beaten up by Keshigs was not. I do think that the developers really need... I think the developers really need to establish what kind of normality they want, because there's so many little things that are just very inconsistent, and you're kind of removing things but only to return them to other things, and it is getting on my nerve, and it has been draining to me. I mean, I want better from the developers. Surprisingly, these guys still have days on hit but that's through a veterancy line. Can't chain stun heroes, I think. Or maybe it can. Or maybe it can. Regardless, that is all for the PTR thing. I know I've been ranting for the last 20-ish minutes, maybe half an hour. But yeah, I think the changes incoming will not really have that much of an impact for those that were buffed. For those that were nerfed, I think we'll still see them around, probably a little bit less for the Kriegsrat Fusiliers, but the Ironcap Scouts will definitely be a choice, a still very, very viable choice. We have been seeing a lot of the lower tiers just be kind of a safe pick, kind of a filler pick, in between some of the strong tier 5s. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Other than that, my name's Azakai. Have a nice... my name's Azakai. Have a nice day. Bye for now.